sometimes the little guys are overlooked from the smaller platforms, and I've never agreed with that. I never thought that was the right move, because sometimes the small platforms are the ones that actually have their feet on the ground.
I mean, my feet on the ground literally right now, but I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's we've been doing this for like a year and a half now, and this has been the longest gap we had between having a guest or having somebody on. We debated like, hey, maybe me and like Steve is the other guy. I don't know if he's gonna make it or not, but we're like, hey, why don't we just get on and talk about stuff? And I'm like, well, it's cooler when you have somebody else there because everybody already knows us. So and everybody kind of comes with a cool story. And we've had some people that own these multi-million-dollar companies. We have people that we know that are just friends that pop on. And I don't know. I think it's more of doing stuff. I guess just doing more consistent content, I think that
yeah.
makes it kind of grow. But me and Steve's aim or the podcast aim is just to try to educate people on everybody's life. There are XYZ amount of people out there, and everybody's got a cool story. You learn something from everybody you meet. But
It, it's about, man, each one teach one from all walks of life, and when we come together, that's when we have our strongest impact, right? When we come together and like that glove, like that fist, that's when we have our best and greatest impact, man. You
I
know,
you say that, and I think instantly back to we. If you see, I was going to say it how it is. If you see white people go and do something, they call on each other and they help each other out. And
yes.
in the black community, we try to do the same thing, and everyone's like, "Well, I maybe may not can do this or do that," and I'm like,
Hmm.
we we fail to stick together in a way. I can
Yeah,
say that much.
yeah, and for me, I always tell people you make time for the things that are important to you.
I
Like
say the same thing.
we all got 24 hours in a day, and how each of us chooses to spend it is what makes the difference, right?
Yeah,
The most important thing that we have to realize is time management is everything, because the most precious commodity is time. I've never seen a person who was terminally ill ask for anything other than more time.
yeah,
Whether
exactly.
yeah, whether it be more time with their child or more time with their parent. I've never heard a person ask for anything other than more time. Not money, not a big house, not fame, but time.
Yeah. If you could buy it, it'd be the most bought thing in the world, the most expensive thing in the world.
It would be the most expensive thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's
But
right, man.
yeah, speaking of time, like just kind of, I guess I don't know if anybody on here that's watching now or that will watch or listen to it on Spotify knows your whole story. But do you want to kind of go into some of your background a little bit? It's like who you are, where you come from.
Absolutely. You know, as a young guy, coming up, parents migrated from Antigua, West Indies, and moved into the Lower East Side. My parents, Hamilton Bryan and Gwen Bryan, gave birth to six siblings together. Um, Myself, Bruce Bryan, I'm the baby of six on my mother's side, and I also have a little brother that my father had outside of the marriage. Um, and we came up dirt poor, to say the least, which without a lot of love in the house, but not a lot of material gain or financial support. But we had a lot of love, and we had each other. So I know firsthand what it means to have family and to have love be the wind beneath your wings that allows you to soar and thrive. At an early age, I watched my brothers get involved in the streets at some point, trying to make ends meet. Coming up in impoverished neighborhoods as the Lower East Side, it's nothing like that now. Lower East Side, you got to pay so much money to live there now. It's unbelievable, right?
Gentrified.
Yeah, yeah. Gentrified is not even the word. It's unbelievable. Then we moved out to Queens in about 78, 1978, 79. We moved out to Queens. I was a young kid. Um, 83, 82, around the height of when the crack era you begin to see the crack era develop. Um, well, a couple of things were developing around that time in the early 80s. Crack, HIV, AIDS, heroin was still on the scene, but it kind of faded out quite a bit. But in Queens, where my family moved to, on the right within the midst of the community from where we live, drug dealing was a common practice. So you begin to see um, the allure of the streets, um, people wanting to pull you in, and you get involved in the wrong crowd. From junior high school to high school, you start seeing guys, um, having little material things that you possibly wish you could have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you start doing little tidbit hustling here and there. You may start off selling marijuana, then you may go into selling drugs, coke or crack or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where it starts at, until you find yourself caught up in the criminal justice system. Um, I first saw my oldest brother, Rupert Bryan. I first saw him as a young person get caught up, and his twin, and then my other brother, they got caught up at one point very early, and once they got caught up, they learned their lesson immediately, and ended their interactions with criminal justice, and they squared up right away. Um, Me, on the other hand, uh, when I started hustling, and then early in my life, my early not my teens, I got arrested, came home out off of that. Then later on, I found myself, in those same areas, frequenting these areas with guys that I have no business around, and then I wound up getting locked up for a homicide I didn't commit, and serving 29 years, of which It's been about 70 days home for me now, and this is it's a lot to get used to after 29 years. Even this whole virtual podcast is a lot to get used to. So, you know, one of the things I learned while I was inside was it's so important to educate myself. So important to educate myself and to read as much as I can read, so that I won't fall that far behind in terms of society. Because society been moving for the last 25, 30 years. Society been moving at a rapid pace, from technology to the cars that people drive, to the way that homes are being developed, to the ring camera that we see security everywhere in front of every house, uh, to just the whole. I reflect back on George Orwell's 1984,
Yeah.
Big Brother watching, right?
Somebody always watching.
Big Brother watching. Now it's someone's always watching.
Yeah.
Uh, I like that, but the other book that I really liked was Animal Farm by George Orwell.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think back on some of the things that I've read that kind of prepared me in a very odd way, prepared me for what I was stepping back into after 29 years of incarceration. So
Yeah.
I like to think that I've been making a fair adjustment thus far. Um, I just try to take it one day at a time, and when I feel anxiety, I just breathe. Um, I practice my breathing techniques, and I realize that this is where I belong. This is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm always telling myself that
Yeah.
prison was not where I belong. Society and with my family
Yeah.
and people that love me, that's where I belong. Right?
Yeah, it's this thought process, or I tell people all the time, they go, I have a few friends, or they'll come to me and ask me things because everybody seems to think I got my shit together. I don't. I'm just putting together this puzzle. I'm putting together this 5 million piece puzzle just like everybody else is, like starting with the corners, try to work my way to the inside and do all that, the
Yeah,
traditional
yeah.
way. Sometimes you gotta step outside a box and grab one of them blue sky pieces and try to see if you can shove it in the right place. But I I tell people often, I'm like, you're exactly where you should be when you're there. Like you're where you should be, regardless, because I'm an engineer. I think of things from like a physics standpoint. And I go back and I go, man, at any point in time, you can exist in like 8 other realities or dimensions. Like you don't know what those other pathways would have held. All else equal, you don't know where you were supposed to end up. You only end up where your decisions, lead you to. We all do stupid shit. Like
Yes.
I've done a lot of dumb things in my, I guess, in my teenage and 20s, and even today I still do some dumb things. But now I'm more mature and I kind of catch it and I go, oh, oh, don't do that. If I have to think twice about something, then I probably shouldn't do it. If more than two
Hmm.
people tell me it's a bad idea, I probably am not gonna do it. And I'm trying to constantly tell my son that he's 13 years old, about to be 14 in January. I'm looking at him like, dude, stop making the same habitual mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, the experience that you went through, and you hopping on all these, I don't know how many podcasts you've been on. I don't know if this is the fourth or third or 50,000th in 70 days, but your story is going to change the lives of a lot of people. And you kind of, everything comes at a sacrifice. You sacrificed 29 years of your life, you educated yourself in those 29 years, and you're giving back.
Yeah.
Whether we know it or not, it's kind of like the butterfly effect. You saying one thing can change the decision of one person, which affects, five other people, which goes out, and those five people help five other people, and it just keeps exponentially growing like that. When I listen to your story on Joe Rogan, I was like, man, this thing's pretty cool. Every time Josh Dubin goes on, I go, oh, I got to listen to this. This is good, because I came from a background. I told you this the other day. I was Douglas Community in Stanton, Tennessee. It was
Uh-huh.
the first experimental farm town for Black people post slavery, and it was all an experiment. They were like,
Wow.
oh, they're gonna fail. They gave one tractor, a couple of mules, and like 3 plows. That's it. 3 crop plows, and then we made it work somehow. And I come from all those people, and I and I go back and think about it. I go, man, they did so much for very little, and I complain about making the money I make. What
Ain't
the
that
fuck is
something?
wrong? Yeah, what the fuck is
Ain't
wrong
that
with
something?
me?
Our,
But yeah,
our, our, our ancestors and our parents were able to do so much with so much less,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I attribute that to their values.
yeah, exactly. The values, like, they had a sense of family. My grandma had 13 children, 6 miscarriages.
Along, yes, wow, wow.
Yeah,
Along with the cost of living back then.
yeah. $2 for a 2x4.
2000.
A 12 pack, a dozen of eggs was 25 cents. That's yeah.
Yes,
I wish it
yes.
was that case nowadays, but yeah, I kind
Oh
of say
yeah.
all that to
A
say that
dozen eggs. If you want a dozen organic eggs, it's gonna cost you maybe close to $10 now.
oh yeah, man. I just came back from Tennessee, and down there a pack of chicken thighs is $5.56 for a 3 pound pack of chicken thighs. Up here in Colorado, it's $12 for that same pack.
Are you serious?
Dude, it's crazy. Colorado is expensive. I
Mm-hmm.
think last year taxes, they taxed me at 15%, just a state.
Uh-huh.
Just a state.
Wow.
Yeah,
What type of governor y'all got down there? Republican governor?
it's Democratic.
It's
Well,
Democratic
not
governor?
Democratic, Democrat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's because of the major hubs. Denver is blue, Colorado Springs is blue, and those are two major cities. They got the most population. Their voices speak louder. Everywhere outside of that is red. Farmers and ranchers.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I
yeah,
figured it was kind of liberal because they were one of the first places that legalized cannabis, right?
mm-hmm. That was one of the best things they probably could ever did. Like, they should have, when they legalized that and they started taxing it, they should have eliminated the income tax, because they make tons. So, like, they take all that money and they'll either give it to like the homeless population to do stuff, then they take the other part of it and they dump it into schools. Like, Colorado has some of the best schools in the country.
Yeah. What's the criminal justice system like over there? In
Oh,
the
you
prison
don't want to
system?
know. You don't want to know. We got two supermax prisons here. There's one going down to past Pueblo. There's one up north past Fort Collins, and they're supermaxes, and they're
Wow.
privately owned. They're privately owned.
Oh,
Yeah.
they got two privately owned supermaxes, huh?
In Colorado, there's just two. Texas is way crazier.
And they gotta meet a certain capacity in order for them to exist. So we know that they're keeping them full.
Yeah, you gotta meet a certain minimum capacity. And the funny thing is, when you get elected as a circuit court judge or a federal judge, there's no rule saying that you can't invest into those private prisons. You can't have holdings in those, prison
Oh,
systems.
so you can have holders and help keep them full, huh?
Yeah, that's the way. It's like lobbying. Like, lobbyists, I don't think that you should be able to lobby. I think that the whole my thought one of my degrees is in political science, and I worked on two congressional campaigns at the federal level, one at a state level, and the amount of, like, lobbying and money that exchanges hands is pretty crazy, and essentially, you shouldn't be able to make the rules and profit off of them. You shouldn't be able to
Yeah,
reinvest
profit
back in
off
the
them.
system.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, you familiar with the documentary Kids for Cash, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Out there in Pennsylvania, where these judges were sending young people to juvenile jails um, for a kickback from the owners of the private prisons.
Yeah, and that reset the mandatory minimums too because their sentencing
Yeah.
got held as precedent. So like I think there was one kid there in Pennsylvania. I can't was it in Hershey? I think it was in Hershey. Um, had a dime bag of weed. He got
Mm.
10 years. He got 10 years for a dime bag of weed, and that became the mandatory minimum. Mandatory minimum sentencing is some bullshit. They need to change that.
Mandatory minimum, three strikes you're out. The 1994 crime bill,
Yeah,
all of that needs to change, right? And some of the damage that is done needs to be reversed.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. They need to go
because I
back
think
and retroactively resentence those people or let them out.
exactly because I think that people figure like, okay, we're no longer doing that, so that fixes the problem. But no, it doesn't fix the problem because of look at what you've done for the last 30 years under that same draconian law, right?
Yeah,
Look at what you've done. So how do you number one, you can't get back the years that you've given to the pizza guy, the guy who stole a slice of pizza and was sentenced to 25 to life,
yeah,
right? Because of three strikes, you're out.
because he was hungry.
Yeah, because he was hungry. What you've done was you essentially uh, criminalized poverty, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
illegal to be poor. That's what Russia did in
yeah,
the Soviet Union
yeah,
pre
it's illegal.
1989.
Yeah, it's illegal to be poor,
Yeah.
right? It's illegal to do whatever it means to find a way to feed yourself and to clothe yourself and to house yourself. Um,
And that's how you make a communist government. If you if you want to go that far down the rabbit hole, that's how you
uh-huh.
effectively construct one because then you make it to where people have to take certain jobs or there's a set group of pay because of this thing, and then if you're poor you're put in jail, and then that jail functions off of the labor that people the people being
Yeah.
in there because they force you to work. In Texas is worse. You grow what you eat. You do that. Okay, then you want to go and you go to Texas and they're like, all right, you're gonna make copper wire and you're gonna like thread it out into building homes. I know there's a prison south of Dallas, Texas that does that, and they're
Mm-hmm.
getting paid 60 was 52 cents a day roundabout,
Mm.
if I'm not mistaken, and that's why the 13th Amendment is still a thing.
Well,
It's
yeah,
weird.
because it legalized slavery,
Yeah,
and
re-legalized it.
it legalized slavery, and not only that, no one wants to deal with the fact that poverty is criminal, right?
Yeah,
Poverty creates crime-generative factors in these marginalized communities of color, right?
yeah,
So these communities are plagued with crime-generative factors, right? And those factors produce attitudes and behaviors that are not conducive to mainstream society. You know.
and the weirdest part is that I think about it and I go, the poorer you are, the more likely you are to end up in the system because the
Oh,
reason why you're
absolutely.
doing that is because you're poor, and the
Exactly.
reason why you're poor is because of the generational wealth gap. I keep thinking to myself, I need to make money to put away so that my kids have something. They have property. That's how you get people to actually do things. When you own something, you own a home or own property, you're pretty much going to do whatever you can to protect it.
Yeah.
That's how you kind of incentivize people to vote and move and do things. You vote with your feet. You if you don't like it in a place, you move. And the more people move, they vote with their feet, the more likely they are to get that certain candidate they want in office or whatever, depending on whether or not if that person is actually legitimately down for the concern or going to do what they said when they get in office. But
Hmm.
yeah, that generational wealth gap is a real thing. And I have people, or I know people that go, no, that's bullshit. They struck down the affirmative action, in the Supreme Court. And I'm like, that was at Title VII. Yeah. Then they're like, well, there's about time you had to just work and, do it based off of your merit. I'm like, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstrap shit is bull. It's not legitimate.
Well, nepotism is another form of affirmative action, right? Because family members, uh, whether it be by way of legacy, your child can get into the same good schools that you've been in. Um, because of who you've been to the school or because of your donations to the school. That all of that is bias, right? So I think that affirmative action was created to create some type of balance to a group of people who have been structurally and systemically marginalized.
Yeah. Like, I
See?
don't think people know what it's like to be black. Like, I got pulled over the other day because I was speeding in an area, but he clocked me on a hill, like going downhill. What do you expect's gonna happen? Like, but my whole thing is, oh, okay, yeah, I was speeding. I had my stuff ready. I handed to him. I was like, look, man, you got me. I was going too fast down the hill, but I'm like, also, you were clocking me on a hill, brother. Like, you're clocking me on a hill. He's like, well, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm like, yeah, cool. But that entire time I'm pulled over, I'm not nervous because the cop has a gun. I'm nervous because I'm a black dude who got pulled over by a white cop.
That's right.
Like, that's
Right.
it. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reality is, we talk about critical race theory and the system not being racism not being baked into the system, the legal system, the real estate system, and every major system that governs our lives. Racism is baked into it, right?
Yeah.
Our brother Bryan Stevenson said, he says, "It's you're better off being rich and guilty, right? You got a better chance being rich and guilty than being poor and innocent,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
And that comes from the communities in which we come from, which are the vast majority are structurally and systemically designed to be marginalized, designed to be poor. From the
Yeah.
property tax, which pays for our education, um, means the majority of us will receive an inferior education. So that's baked into the system. There's something that my lawyer Josh Dubin once said. He said that really, has he ever gone to visit a person in prison when he's fighting someone has a wrongful conviction? Really, has he ever gone to a prison and seen someone that was sitting across him that had these astronomical numbers, sentences are 50 to life, 75 to life, or 50 to life for robbery? Really, has the person across from him been white or anything other than black? Right? In
Exactly.
fact, in fact, um, they've never been, and he can attest to that. Every time he goes into an institution to see someone who's crying out for being wrongfully convicted and having this sentence that are just equivalent to a death sentence, they're either black or Hispanic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is not by accident. Um, it's not by accident that we make up 13% of the population in New York, in the United States, right? But yet we make up, more than 50% of the incarceration rate. It's not by accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
not by
not.
accident. Man. It's not by accident.
If you have increased policing in an area, the likelihood that you get more crime is higher because they're looking for you're actively looking for things that are perceived as crime, like jaywalking, or just,
Yeah.
you're walking down the street. If a cop comes up and pulls up on you, and say you live in South Central, so a cop runs up, pulls up on you, and throws you against the car, and you fight back a little bit, that's resisting arrest. Bam, I got you on a trumped up charge. That's it. You going to jail. But I was thinking while we were just going through that, there's a like I want to just go down the rabbit, not even going to rabbit hole. Let's put the breadcrumbs together. People say often, and it's more often than not white people that say, "Oh, there's no systemic racism." Da da da. Well, let me paint a picture for you. I'm going to go ahead and walk it down the rabbit hole because this is one thing that I think I'm really good at. If a group of people were enslaved at any point in time, and then they had to fight for those rights to get just simple rights to go in the same bathroom as you, to go in the same store as you, and to live in the same neighborhood as you. And they are
Mm-hmm.
constantly harassed on that thing, on that basis that they are black, white, or black or brown or yellow or something on the to the opposite effect. And you go look down and you go, okay, we're going to put them in these neighborhoods and the projects. Let's go Harlem, let's go South Central LA, and these other places. And it's hard for them to get a job, and that wealth isn't there. That opportunity to have that generational wealth isn't there. What do you expect? You get thrown in jail for something. You don't have the means to take care of yourself. It's I won't even go as just racist, it's just discriminatory because it's based on a socioeconomic structure.
It's not what you expect; it's what you know is going to happen. That's why you created it.
Yeah, you know that's gonna continually keep a group of people marginalized, oppressed, and down.
Well, you create a permanent underclass, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we have in this country, a permanent underclass. And that, formerly incarcerated people, uh, over 60% are still unemployed 1 year after being released. And you have some 700, well, some 650,000 people released every year in the United States. 650,000. And if you say 60% unemployed a year later, what are the chances of them going back to their criminality, going back to you know, what they've known to do, right? If there's so many barriers in front of them, right?
Yeah, because the reason you got in there in the first place was because you couldn't afford to take care of yourself, odds are, or you didn't have any other opportunity, or you couldn't see past the street corner you lived on. And you're gonna have to go back to that same thing. You're gonna go to jail again, and then the three strike rule comes in. You're going to jail for life. I think I was very fortunate to get the chance to go and play AAU basketball and leave Brownsville, Tennessee, leave Stanton, Tennessee. And when I was able to do that, I was able to see all the opportunity I was offered and go, oh, I want this now. What do I have to do to get this? Oh, I got to go to school. I got to get an education. I got to get a career. Okay, cool. I can do this.
That's when you left Brownsville, Tennessee, huh?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it seems like all the areas that I know with the name Brownsville seem to be some really impoverished communities, right? You got a,
Mm-hmm.
I believe you got a Brownsville in Texas where
Yeah.
a lot of testing was going on with, I believe, Elon Musk and sending up spaceships
Yeah.
into space.
Yeah.
But also in New York City, Brownsville is actually the poorest community. The Bronx is the poorest borough. Brownsville is the poorest community. And, you know, uh, I- it's not an accident that both places, both Brownsville and the Bronx itself, particularly South Bronx, are infested with gangs and violence and crime. Right?
Yeah.
It's not by accident that crime and violence and gang activity are concentrated in these impoverished neighborhoods.
Yeah. I can almost not hear you, Bruce. Can you pull the phone closer up to your face? I can't hear you that well. Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit.
How about now?
Yeah, that's way better. That's way better.
All right.
Um, yeah, this thing I showed you, I'm gonna do something quick, real cool right here. So like this whole
Just,
technology screen sharing thing,
just charts. Yeah.
that's the average income of my hometown.
Wow.
That's the average income. It's $23,000.
Wow.
That's wild. Like that's average household income, $35,000. My mom raised me on $24,000 a year, which was disability. Most people there are on some form of government assistance, like welfare, food stamps, Section 8 housing, on all that stuff. And now they got the Blue Oval thing coming over there with the EV vehicle plant from Ford, and it's going up. Let's see what Brownsville, Texas is. It's just as bad. That's crazy.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just as bad. All right, Brownsville.
Look at Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York, Brownsville.
Yep. There it goes. It's the same. It's all the same. It's the same.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that the name is Brownville, and these areas are predominantly brown and black people that live here. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't know if that's a coincidence that that's like that. But
I don't know, but I know there's a
that's an interesting dynamic. We just pinpointed three areas in the country that are named Brownsville, and all three of them are suffering immensely due to poverty.
poverty. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we know that poverty is violence.
And that's
Right?
the wild part. That's the like insane part. So it's funny. There's this place called Whitesville, Tennessee, right?
They gotta have some money over there.
Yeah, but this is the crazy thing. They used to only, and it was in Tennessee. It used to be a only white town. You were only allowed in there if you were white.
Wow.
So in 1969, they desegregated everything. Right, 1969 was like the end of segregation. Like that's the backstop. In that
Hmm.
year, the average income was 40. I think it was $43,000. So yeah, $43,000
Mm.
right there. $43,000. After that, after that year, let's go back 2023. $48,000. Nothing really has changed, but let me go back and do the search I did before. 17,000 is the individual income.
Uh,
Up to 2020, sorry, up to 2020. Yeah.
this is
All the
I mean
white people left that area. I'm telling you, they
yeah,
did. That was the thing. They always told us the stories of it when we grew up.
this is by design. I know that in the zip code, I believe 37208 in Nashville, Tennessee,
Yep.
was one of the highest incarceration rates in the country per capita, right? And this particular community was essentially, you
Yeah.
know, 80-90% African American people that look like us,
There it is
right?
right there. North Nashville incarceration rate in 2018 was the highest in the nation. That's crazy.
You see, and it's a community of it's a very small community, um, with a population of predominantly black folk, and you have to ask yourself why is it that this is has the highest incarceration rate in the country, and then you have to ask yourself what happens to those children that are left behind.
Here's the answer right here. Right there. Compared to 2018, nearly every type of crime in North Nashville decreased in 2022. Robbery dropped 38%. Overall property offenses were down 18% compared to 2018. Violent crime decreased as general property offenses were down 14.1%. And all of that was due to not just better policing. It was because they had a tornado that tore through there in 2017, and then they had COVID shutdowns that happened after that, so no one was able to work. That's back to the income differential.
Klein, somebody tried to call me.
Uh,
Somebody tried to call me.
you were like,
Yeah,
"Yep, nope, bye. I'm
yeah,
doing something."
yeah, yeah. I didn't even. I'm not answering that. But yeah, these numbers, these stats are astronomical, man, and it it becomes generational too because
There it is.
oftentimes those young people that are left behind, they wind up becoming involved in the criminal justice system as well,
Yeah.
right? So I do what I do is because my intentions is to help break that cycle of intergenerational incarceration,
How do you
right?
break it?
Well, I think that you break it by one, pouring resources into those marginalized communities where these young people are. We need resources, right? There are no more youth centers, all right? So there's so much idle time, and then you wonder, some kids are sitting at home on video games or social media, and they're not utilizing social media as a source of empowerment. They're using it as a source of entertainment,
Yeah,
right? And so we need to break that cycle because the idle mind is the devil's workshop.
it
So if we
is.
don't have if we don't have outlets for our young people to engage in productive and conducive things like reading, like a healthy physical activity, like learning skills like culinary skills and horticulture and skills that can help them develop a way of living, right? And we need to tap into those values, right? Those values and those beliefs, and letting our young people know that they can change can happen. Um, I met a young man while I was incarcerated, and this is a shameless plug. I met a young man while I
Oh
was
no.
incarcerated. He was I saw him on the news on Pix 11. I saw him on Pix 11, and he had developed a nonprofit. He had this vision for that he had just created this nonprofit called Hood Code, which he said was designed to create a coding lab in every housing project in New York City, right?
Hmm.
Uh, to go into these housing projects and to find an empty space, to get some computers donated, and to get somebody to teach coding,
Hmm.
because his idea was The average household in NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, the average household income is about $30,000 a year. Um, the average income for a person starting off that knows coding um, is about three times that, 90,000 a year. So automatically, with one generation, you can break the cycle of intergenerational poverty, right?
Yeah.
So that
Skills.
skills,
Skills.
viable skills for a job market, right? Viable skills for the job market in which we live in now. From everything from AI to Chat GPT, coding is necessary in every facet of our life now, and so many of our young people are not being exposed to it.
And that's the way that the world is kind of going to, like, AI, all this computer generated stuff, technology. If you could, like, bare minimum, you got to know how to use Excel and Word. If you don't know how to use
Yeah,
Microsoft Office, you're not useful to anybody anymore. That's
yeah.
always a requirement at the top, at the top going, proficient in word processing at a minimum. And then if you know SQL, simple query language, you can get yourself a $50,000 a year job. And
So my thing is, how do we get something like hood code in those communities that we just talked about, in those Brownsvilles, in those Nashville, Tennessees, where that 37208 zip code is at, as opposed to just getting it in every housing project in New York City? How do we take something like hood code and bring it across the country? Right? It takes resources. Um,
money, just
yeah,
grants
it takes resources. It takes grants. The brother has his 501c3, and this is a young guy that
right
came.
there.
That's right. That's right. Jason Gibson. He's a friend of mine now. I reached out to him while I was in prison,
Oh, yeah.
um, and we talk on the phone now. We've developed. He has absolutely no idea that I'm talking about him right now, unless he hears this podcast. Yeah.
I'll make sure to tag him when we put it up and then send him a link to the episode. I'm gonna find out how to get in touch with him. I'm gonna talk to this
Oh,
man.
I'll definitely push his information your way,
Oh yeah, I'll talk to him because this
because it
this is this makes sense. And I
makes
can guess when, Bruce. Guess when I had internet. And
when
I got a master's and three bachelor's degrees. Guess when I got internet?
about 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, about 10 years. Yeah, when I was 22, when I went to college.
Wow,
When I went to
wow.
college, it was the first time I actually got on the internet. That's when I got my first email. I was when I got to college and I was an engineering student, I was behind the curve because I didn't even know what Excel was. I didn't know what Microsoft Word was. All the
Hmm.
papers that I wrote, because I grew up in Brownsville, Tennessee, I had to go to the library. If there was a computer, I had to wait for hours. If there was no computer, I had to get out the encyclopedia or, do some Dewey Decimal System stuff, cite my references by opening up the book and then reading through it, finding out what I needed and writing my papers.
Mm.
That's the difference. Crazy. That's
And you
like
went
that.
to school for engineering, but imagine if you had something like a hood code in your neighborhood when you were growing up.
I'd have been straight. I would have. I think that's
You
funny
talking
because
about life? You talking about life changing?
yeah, that would have changed my life. I grew up my
Yeah.
whole life without internet, without satellite TV. I had the same 3, 4 stations that got broadcast through them bunny ears on the TV.
And this brother learned coding in prison, man.
That's wild.
He taught
So
himself how to code. He learned how to code in prison.
I'm gonna put it this. Watch this. I'm gonna share something else with you. Wait, I'm gonna share this tab real quick. So we gave this much money to Ukraine this year, $75 billion. If they
Mm.
took 5 billion of that and broke it into every school district across the country and gave it to every neighborhood that had a median household income of less than $50,000, that would make a huge difference. And then they manage the money from there and go, hey, you have to report on this money and show us receipts of what you did, because if you could just do that at a minimum, invoice it every month and do that from a government grant, that would change the lives of so many people. Like, I, man,
But it would change the life of so many people. But it would also remove the permanent underclass that they've created and that they feel, because it's not necessary, that they believe is necessary in order for capitalism to thrive, right?
yeah, yeah.
But what's happening now is the middle class is being wiped out. So you either have financial stability or you don't have it.
And I think this is my opinion. I don't think the financial class is being wiped out. I think it's just being taxed to an unbelievable like threshold. Like You cannot survive on $50,000 a year with a kid. With a wife and a kid, $50,000 a year, you're struggling hard.
Well, if you try it in New York City, you're gonna need some public assistance.
Yeah,
Um, you might very well possibly you might be homeless. Uh, it's gonna be difficult for you. It's
yeah.
gonna be a battle.
And it's more difficult than it should be. And they think the answer is, oh, let's give, make the minimum wage from 14 or 12 to $15. Come on now.
We don't need a minimum wage. We need a livable wage.
Yeah, livable wage. And funny enough, in Brownsville, Tennessee, the minimum wage is still $7.25.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna make sure because I was just talking to my cousin about that. Brown.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah, there it is. Yep, I'll show it to you just so people know I'm not lying. This is where I grew up at. And I
That
remember when it went from 625 to 725. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm rich."
well, here, right? A cycle of poverty. It keeps the cycle of poverty going, man.
That's
Right?
dude. Cuz I went down there and like I bought groceries for some family members like cuz I was spending the night at the house. I bought like $200 of groceries and they was like, "Why'd you buy this is a lot of food. You must be rich." I'm like, "No. This is not that bad." I'm like, $200 is what I spend in 3 or 4 days for my kids and me. Like that's what I what I spend. And they're like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's normal, right?" They're like, "No. We have maybe $50 to get groceries for an entire like 2 weeks." And I'm like, "How the how? Like
Yeah.
how are you making it?" You know?
How do you make that? Well, prior to my incarceration,
Mhm.
um, there's always been a Salvation Army around about 2 blocks from my home, my
Mhm.
parents' home, and I've never passed by there and saw a line of people outside the way I have the other day.
Really?
The other day while reporting to parole,
Mhm.
I have to walk through that area. That's the route that I take.
Yeah.
And when I tell you that there was a line all the way up the block to the corner at the Salvation Army, I've never seen anything like it. I've
Jesus.
never seen anything like it. I've never seen so many people in need um, in my community.
Yeah.
It was mind blowing, right? And then you see them, and then from everything from peanut butter to fresh produce, and we're not talking about just a mother or a son or a young person. We're talking about a mother with 3 kids and
Jesus.
a husband, a complete household,
Yeah.
right? Mother, husband, 3 kids, their own line at the Salvation Army, and this is going down. This is going all. This line is stretching all the way down the block, and people are still coming. So
Jesus.
yeah, yeah,
I
it's become something, man, that it's a sight to see. Then you see the homeless population. It
me
makes me it makes me reflect on the fact that prison. When I initially went to prison, it was actually somewhat of a prison, right? And as time progressed, it became a de facto mental health institution because you have at least 45% of the prison population in New York State are suffering from mental health. And
yes.
then you have another 20%, maybe 25%, I'll say, um, that are suffering from mental illness, but they're undiagnosed. You
I
see, so we're talking about the vast majority of people that are incarcerated are dealing with some mental illness, and incarceration doesn't do anything to address their mental illness. What it does do is it exacerbates it.
Yeah, because you're around all these people all the time with these different personalities. You were within 6 square feet of somebody, just right there
Oh,
next to you.
I mean, prior to me coming home some 75 days ago or so, uh, the the suicide rate in New York State prisons has been going up for the past 10 years.
Jesus,
Guys
Jesus.
taking their own lives after 10, 20 years of incarceration, unable to take it, unable to bear with the burden of being in prison for so many years, and at the same time suffering from a mental illness that
Yeah.
no one seems to seems to care about, and is going unaddressed, right? You're being just heavily medicated with generic medicine, and you got these people sleeping for 18, 19 hours a day in some days. And when they're
Jeez.
not sleeping and when they're not under the influence of their medication, oftentimes they're being abused. If they have a crisis, they're attacked by staff because staff is not trained. You got to remember, a correction officer is there to do a couple of things: make sure the count is correct, and to lock you in a cell, and to make sure you get fed. They're not psychologists. They're not psychiatrists. They don't have a they barely lack any education, right? The basic education, much less the education to address someone suffering from bipolar, schizophrenic, depression, clinical depression. They don't have the skills to deal with something like that. So when they see a person in a crisis, they usually resort to one or two things. One, the person might be ODing. Two, um, he's faking. He's acting up, right?
Hmm.
And if he's ODing, let him go. Let him OD because we don't know what drugs he was taking. Maybe he was
That's
taking K
crazy.
two.
You
Yeah,
lying. You
yeah. This
lying.
is common practice. This is common practice right now today. This is common practice.
That's wild because I have a cousin. He was born. He was my cousin Mike. I'm not gonna say his birthday because people start putting stuff together. They're gonna find him if they listen to this. But he used to be a psych at a counselor, a psych at the prison in Whitesville, Tennessee.
Hmm.
And I wondered why he quit some 3.5 years ago. I think it was around about 2 to 3 years ago. I wonder why he quit. And I asked him when I went down there because I don't talk to many people. I don't, because I always think that I'm bothering people. I try not to talk to people when I when I have the opportunity because I'm like, I don't want to intrude on people's lives. But he told me, it was like, yeah, the reason why I stopped was because it was just so much. He's like, we're understaffed, we're undermanned, and I'm basically a sponge for all these people's issues, and I'm trying to get them to feel better. Now he said he's like the prison population in Whites. Let me see what it is. I'm gonna make sure I got it right. Let me see. Um, so yeah, they got 1,536 inmates inside of there. And of those 1,536 inmates, there's only 3 counselors. There's one per shift. That's it.
Oh my God. Oh
There
my
was one
God.
per shift. Yeah, he was like one per shift, and I'm thinking
Oh
about
my
that. That's
God.
500 patients. That's worse than a doctor nowadays, like a medical doctor.
Oh my God. I mean, and then
Yeah,
no one is concerned about the mental health of the person of the three counselors that live there
yeah.
because
And he was
that
like, I
can be
had to take a
controlled.
step back. I had to he took a sabbatical, and then he ended up quitting, and he opened his own
That's
business.
right.
He's like he'd rather power wash houses and have another business where he like rents out, like he does like party and event stuff. He said, hey, I'd rather do that than to do what I was
And
doing
you
in it
don't
because
even know you don't even know if you're having an impact at that point. When you start having 500 clients,
yeah,
you don't even realize if you're having an impact because you can't. I mean, 500 clients a piece, man.
that's crazy.
I mean, let's be for real here, man. How can you determine? How can you quantify what the work that you're doing to say, well, at least I'm touching this many lives or having this impact? You
Because
can't. You
you
simply can't do it.
Because you think about the 40 at work hours in a week, if he's seeing a patient every hour, and that's if he works 5 days a week, that's only 40. You're only
That's
hitting a
right.
small dent in the population.
That's right.
They're only seeing 120 in a week if they're able.
And if you do 80, I mean, and then you got to remember what happened to your break. What happened to your moment of breathing for you at work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible, and that's what we're dealing with in institutions across this country. The mental health crisis. If you want to go to see a person that's dealing with mental health, you have to go into a prison because the prisons are holding all of the mental illness. People suffering with mental illness, the prisons are holding them, and they're exacerbating their mental illness, and they're actually taking their lives at numbers that are unbelievable. I mean, we've had. I think this year alone, you may have had 18 or 19 deaths on Rikers Island already.
All
And if you
what?
can pull that, yeah, you can pull that up. Rikers Island is under 5,000 people now. You may have 18 or 19 deaths this year alone. And the vast majority of them, if not all of them, they may have been suffering from some mental health crisis, because, as we both know, substance abuse goes hand in hand with mental illness.
Yeah, 15 this year. Oh
15
no,
this year,
18. No, 18 this year. Here we go. I'm gonna share it with you. Yep, I'm gonna share it.
18 this year on Rikers Island, with a
Uh,
population that's under 5,000, and you're just getting to half the year now.
yeah,
That's 6 months. So in the next 6 months, we may have another nine, right, or another
18
18.
people.
So yeah, if you got 36 people dying in one year in one institution,
That's crazy.
that's and this is an institution that it's under 5,000 people there now. At one point, Rikers Island had 20 something thousand.
Jesus.
Right? So that's 18 lives
Jesus.
lost and 18 families that have to deal with the. And the reality is, those people, none of them were convicted yet. These are Rikers Island is a detention center. You're
Yeah.
accused, and according to the law, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, so you
None of
shouldn't even
them.
be locked up.
So you shouldn't even be locked up. Yet
And
we have um, so many of our politicians that try to engage in fear mongering, saying um, it's the bail reform laws that are causing an increase in crime. But I tell you what, crime is down, and the incarceration rate in New York State is down. When I was incarcerated, in 1996, 97, when I first came to prison, the prison population was something like 70,000 in New York State. Now we're down to 31,500. So if the prison population is down, crime can't be up, because we know they got no problem locking you up and sending you
yeah.
away.
So what's
So
going on? Are people moving?
yeah.
Are they becoming homeless? Are they falling off the grid?
So while crime, a lot of times people have done such long sentences, there are two things that we know for sure: people educate out of crime, or people age out of crime. So people locked up for these long amounts of time. Guys 50, 40 years old, you don't think the same as you did when you were 20
Yeah.
or 19, right?
Yeah.
And they're releasing these people. They're doing their best to never come back, despite struggling on the outside. Many of them continue to live in poverty, but they refuse to engage in criminality and come back to prison. You see, because many of these guys have learned their lesson. A lot of guys you have now are just being warehoused, and women are being warehoused. 25, 30 years in prison. Many of them have been exposed to domestic violence. That's why they've committed the crimes they've committed to begin with,
Yeah.
and no one is looking at them from holistically, a holistic approach as to why these young women are committing these crimes of violence against their lovers,
Yeah.
or against their quote unquote abusers, who have sex trafficked them for years, or sexually assaulted them for years. No one's looking at those mitigating factors that cause them to react violently, or maybe take the life of their lover. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that people should be. I don't think that you should judge. People. I don't know. I just think that you shouldn't judge a person by one thing they did at one point, especially if they were under the age of 30. Like under the age of 30, you still are trying to develop and grow. I would say under the age of 27, 24. Like anything before then, you need to just chalk it up to a loss because we're all fucking stupid. Like I know I was fucking dumb. Like I sit back and think about some of the choices I made. I'm like, Jesus, man, you were stupid. And yet you do something wrong and someone's trying to change the path of your life forever because of one thing that you did. And it could be something very minor, like, oh, I smoked weed and got caught with a bag of weed. Okay, what? You're not. It's a non-violent drug offense.
And
Non-violent.
some of these young people are sentenced to um, such lengthy prison sentences that it's de facto a life sentence, a death sentence, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because if you give a person 50 to life, 75 to life, only thing you didn't do was push the needle in their arm, and eliminate them sooner than later, right?
yeah. You're killing them because when they get out, odds are they're not going to be able to find a job or be able to do anything. That
Yeah.
leads to depression, more mental illness, and then they're probably going to be suicidal. Unfortunately.
And that's why there are bills like the Second Chance Bill, Second Chance Act, the um, the Releasing Aging People in Prison bill is called RAP. Um, RAPP, RAP organization is pushing it. When you're 55 and up, if you spent 15 years or more in prison, you should be eligible for parole, at least have a hearing,
Mm-hmm.
um, because we know that people don't think the same, they don't live the same as they have 10, 15, 20 years prior to coming to prison.
Yeah.
So our young people who have these numbers, particularly our young girls, our young women, um, it is my personal opinion that there needs to be, particularly for women, there needs to be a different system, man. To incarcerate women for 25 years, 30 years, um, whether they're suffering from postpartum syndrome and they
Mm-hmm.
wind up killing their child, or
Mm-hmm.
they're suffering from domestic violence and wind up killing their lovers. Um, we got to do something about the impact mass incarceration has had on our females, right? Predominantly black and brown women are
Yeah.
incarcerated across the country. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if the stats are still the same, but at one point, Oklahoma had the highest rate of incarcerated women. Maybe you can look that up and check it out. At one point, Oklahoma had so many females locked up that Mark Zuckerberg's wife started a coding program in Oklahoma in the female prisons, and 80% of the women were mothers.
Oh, we. Yeah. And I think this year it was. Yeah. Yeah. This year, the state with the highest rate of female in prison was Idaho.
Uh huh.
This calendar year, and that's oh Jesus. Yeah, it was Oklahoma in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. That's crazy. How, that's like having a award for the worst test score. Like you can't like.
Yeah, but
What do you-
but then the other thing is, who are we locking up in Oklahoma? Oklahoma used to be an indigenous a
yeah, it used to
state,
be
right?
Indian. Yeah, yeah,
Used to be Indian. So what are we looking at now? Incarcerating another marginalized group of people. We're talking about black and brown people.
yeah, yeah. I think that it comes like most of this stuff can be solved by just bridging like your wealth gap, like making sure people have the minimum skills to get a job that pays them $50,000 or not even just a set number. What is the cost of living in your state? All right, cool. Let's make sure that people can at least make the bare minimum of that. Like
That's right.
just be able to feed themselves, their kids, and get to work.
Yeah, a livable wage, not
Y-
minimum wage, a livable wage, and
Yeah,
according to the county that you live
yeah.
in,
Because
right?
where I live here, you can't like the Tennessee income people have ain't gonna make it here. You ain't gonna make it a month.
In Colorado.
Yeah, you ain't gonna make it. Nah, man. You can like you make less than here. Let me see what the median income is for Colorado.
So imagine if they tried to move out to Miami.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Yeah, the median household income in Colorado Springs is $71,957. Yeah, if you don't make at
Wow.
least 70 grand in Colorado as a whole,
I had no idea it was that expensive out there.
yeah, and they're saying that after taxes.
Mm.
That's your net, not gross. That's your net income. That's crazy.
It's a lot of work to be done, and that's why, small steps like I was telling you, the brother is taking with Hood Code. Small steps like that, they need to be funded. They need to be highlighted. People need to know about them, and the model needs to be replicated in other states, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if Hood Code can reach New York and maybe can't reach Tennessee or Colorado, then we need to sit down with a Kenya Clark and see how we can replicate that model over there.
I
You see what I mean? And
I
how can we?
wish I wish I had the solution. I wish I was smart enough to fix it.
Yeah, but we need to begin. We find those solutions that work, and we get on the ground and we begin to replicate them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
see how we can bring those same programs to other parts of the world, other parts of the country that are in need of them.
It's kind of the same issue we had in the army. You'd have all your higher ups, all your like battalion commanders, brigade commanders. They
Yeah,
sit there and
yeah.
go, "Oh, we're gonna go to National Training Center. We're gonna do all this stuff." Meanwhile, all of us like platoon leaders and like
Hmm.
platoon sergeants and enlisted people are like, "Hey, our shit's broken. We don't have enough shit to fight. Like we don't have enough stuff." And they're like, "Well, why don't you have enough stuff to fight?" We're like, "What did you spend all that money in the budget on?" It looks like brigade got a brand new set of printers. Y'all don't
Yeah.
need those fucking printers. We need
Printer?
truck parts. We need different M4s. We need to get our fucking machine guns fixed. Like, how do you help us do that? It's like nobody in the real world is listening. Because if you look at the military, like the thing that I realized really quickly is if you look at the military and you look at kind of do a sociological study or even a quantitative study on the military, it is a small microcosm of how the country is doing as a whole, because you have so many people just together paying attention to each other, and everybody comes from different walks of life. Like you got, so all of your officers and lieutenants have bachelor's degrees or master degrees. Your battalion commanders and battalion sergeant majors and division commanders all have these PhDs and stuff. And then you got all your enlisted people at the company level don't have degrees. And you got all these people just gelling together in a big melting pot. That's the
Mhm.
same thing that's in America, but you got it in the military. It's right there. And you got men, women, you got Asians, fucking Indian people, you got Indian people from across the ocean, you got black people, you got white people, you got every type of person is there. And that's the perfect little mock-up or study to figure out the like what problems exist and how to change them. And people now, like your politicians that are getting elected now, or our politicians that are getting elected now, only have, a House of Representative members only has 2 years in office. By the time they get there, they got to start planning for reelection. So they ain't even thinking about passing no policy. They might get you a couple of grants and move on, but that's it. Your senators get 4 years. After year one, they got to start prepping up to get reelected. So, what are they going to do?
And one of the things we need to do is we need to get on a grassroots movement, man, and start educating our people about the importance of local politics
Yeah, your
and get
aldermans and your
yeah,
commissioners.
and getting involved our aldermen, our commissioners, our district attorneys,
Yeah,
uh, you know, our council members, our assemblymen, and what it is that we can do to hold their feet to the fire. And if you're not doing what you said you're going to do, that's on your agenda, and you're not satisfying your constituency, then we're gonna get you out of there, man. We're
yeah.
gonna come together and we're gonna get you out of there.
A big thing that I notice is that a large part of our population, especially brown and black people, they're illiterate. Like they don't know how to read. Like if I gave a Senate bill to somebody from my neighborhood and say, "Hey, read this, interpret, and tell me about it," they'd be like, "The fuck? You like what?" They would try and they would fail. I'm
Well,
I'm 90% sure that that would happen.
the other
And
thing I recently learned over the past few years while incarcerated that some 50% of those incarcerated are suffering from dyslexia,
that's wild.
and there's no teacher or staff actually trained in these institutions that I've been in to actually diagnose and actually pinpoint when a person is living with dyslexia. So what you have is incarcerated people fighting to get their GEDs or their high school equivalencies for 10, 20 years. I know a guy that's been in adult basic education for 26 years trying to prepare himself to take the GED test, right?
Jesus.
For 26 years. And it's not that they're dumb, but you would have there's a stigma associated with someone who has dyslexia because people don't fully understand that it's simply a different way of processing information.
Yeah.
Um, some of our most brilliant minds are dyslexic from
You process spatially. They
right.
they
That's right.
yeah, they process spatially instead of just seeing something as one dimensional, like words. They see them as two dimensional and they move. They're like, oh, well, you take the same person dyslexia and put them in front of Pro E and do solids modeling where they can like, oh, I need to make this three-dimensional shape. They can do that way better than I can. Yeah.
Yes, when you look at the Richard Bransons of the world, he's lived with dyslexia for his entire life. Damon John from Shark Tank, he's dyslexic. So countless of our wealthy people, our creative people. Whoopi Goldberg, she's been living with dyslexia her whole life. So no one is able to actually diagnose our people that are incarcerated that are struggling to learn how to read and write. I mean, how do you actually rehabilitate someone if
Yeah.
they can't actually read, right? How do
Yeah.
you provide adequate representation for someone in the courts if they have to sign a document and don't know what they're signing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and how do they contribute to their defense right, with their lawyer if they can't read emotion or what it means to prepare a defense,
If they got
or whether
autism.
if
Yeah.
they yeah, if they suffering from dyslexia and they
Yeah.
don't have the ability to assess and process what it is that you're putting before them.
Yeah. That's like when I have somebody come into the gym, they come in, if they haven't worked out ever in their life, they come in, I'm like, "Hey, all I wanna do is see you just squat right now." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "I wanna watch you squat down." And then they
Hmm.
try it and they fall over, and I'm like, "Okay, we're just gonna start with this base thing. Like, we're gonna teach you how to squat. All right,
Yeah,
you're
we're
gonna
gonna teach you how to keep your heels in the
yeah,
ground
on
and
the
press the
ground.
ground
Yeah, I'm
with
gonna
your
teach
heels, not your toes.
yeah, not your toes. You wanna push through your ankle bone all the way up, not straight up, but backwards in a different direction. Like, I teach you how to do that, and it's like fixing this complicated problem of, how do we get less people in prison? How do we get the people in prison out of prison? It's a
Uh-huh.
resource thing, and it's a step-by-step incremental thing, and then realizing that the system is fucked up more than what we think it is or what people assume. Because you and I both know how fucked up it is from
Yes.
just research. You've been there. I've been reading about it, preparing myself to sit here and talk to you and all these other things. And I have family members that have been in and out of prison. Like I got I got 8 uncles and I have 8 aunts. Of the 8 uncles, six of them, no, four, 5 of them are addicted to crack cocaine.
Mm.
One of them has rehabbed himself and came back. And then their nephews have, some of them are in the same boat that they were in. And I'm like, man, in and out of prison, doing all these different things. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. I understand what happened or how they got to that point. How do we fix it and prevent all of our kids and the next generation from doing that? How do we help them that are currently going through this problem, those aunts and uncles or cousins, get out of the system? It's a complicated problem, but it's not really that complicated. It's more of dumping resources into these areas that don't have enough resources, getting the right people in there, and then being a good steward of that data you collect, and then providing it to the people that write the checks to go, hey, write more checks. We're doing this. This is going to work. This is going to happen. So
There's so much work to do, man. And it's platforms like yours, and and people like you. To be quite honest, it takes the best of us to raise up the rest of us, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
you and you one of the best, man, because
I don't
you
know.
got a platform where you trying to speak truth to power, right? And
Yeah.
letting people know, there are some gray areas in life. It's not all black and white.
You see, there you go. It's not all black and white.
Not all black and white, man. It's not all black and white.
I'm gonna end it there because this
Yes.
this has been a really good conversation. I don't want you to sit in the car for that long. I know it's probably hot up there and everything too, but let
No,
everybody know where they can find you. Where can they
we do.
find you at?
You can find me on Instagram at Bruce.Bryan24.
Hmm.
Um, but also, I'll be sending you a Venmo account, so any support anybody wants to offer after 29 years of incarceration, struggling to get on my feet and work things out, and be able to provide for myself and family. So I'll be sending that to you as well, Kenya.
Okay.
Um, and other than that, I'm out here doing the work, man. Anybody interested in communicating with me, they can hit me up on Instagram. Also, you can I'm sure you could provide my email account,
Yeah.
which is bruce.a.bryan11 bruce.a.bryan the number 11 at gmail.com. Um, and I'm open to hearing and sharing ideas with people on how we can come together and have a greater impact on what we're trying to do and change the lives of our people, man.
Yeah.
Let's come together and let's do it, because collectively we can do more than we can do individually.
Collective action dilemma. It's a
That's
thing.
right.
It's a thing. It's a thing in politics. Like, oh, somebody else will vote this person in. All right, cool. And then they end up losing the election. You're like, what happened? Well, did you vote? Nope. I thought you were going to do it. Well, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, Bruce, it's been awesome. I'm gonna continue to chat with you, email back and forth, figure out different things, different avenues and things we can do to help each other. But I'm gonna end the broadcast there. But don't you leave, Bruce, okay?
All right.